okay.
Good, how are you doing? Good.
Good to see you. Now, you live in Arcadia. You weren't affected by the fire,
We were evacuated. So, yeah.
but there
We're
was
home. No, yeah, no fire damage, just a lot of stress.
Do you live in the north?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we had,
Scary situation.
it was pretty scary. Like,
It's okay. You always have people like Lauren who are masters of the cell phone nearby. The DoubleTree's full up. I was there today. Really bad. You're okay? I mean, I live over here by Braddock School. Less than an hour. Yeah, we were without power. My mom lives in Arcadia, and she was without power for 4 days. She lives in South Arcadia. She was without power from Tuesday, Wednesday. She lives in the city, not in county. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Out. Night before.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular city council meeting this Tuesday, January 21st, and I'm calling this meeting to order at 7:33. I'd like to start off this evening with a special acknowledgement. Obviously, we all know the tragic fires, but just want to take a moment to think about all those who have lost so much property and lives, pets, relatives, all that in both the Eaton fires and in Palos Verdes. So if we could just take a moment to stop and collect our thoughts and take a moment to think about them and all that they're going through, and just let them know we are together and we are supporting them. But let's just take a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Okay, That is a very solemn way to start our meeting, but for all the pain and suffering there's also a lot of joy in this world, and I want to convene in honor of some of our newer residents in Monrovia. Carlo Anthony Falcone, born November 28th, 2024, to Historic Preservation Commissioner Michael and Vedrana Falcone. And then, I always should look. Okay, Vahe Boyajian, born December 11th, 2024, to Building Division Manager Greg and Noreen Boyajian. I'm sorry. Nolan John Simpson, born January 6, 2025, to parents Garrett and Kelsey Simpson and grandmother Annette Simpson. And then there's Ivory Blossom, born July 26, 2024, foster child to Monrovia Old Town Advisory Board member Sean Spencer. And I have a special place in my heart for people that are foster parents. That is such a gift. I don't know that I could do it myself, and so my heart really goes out to anyone who's willing to take on a foster child. Okay, we are going to proceed then with our invocation and then Pledge of Allegiance, and that's going to be led by Monrovia Pack 66 Cub Scouts. So we will start with, and I'm sure there's a memo here, who's? Steve Martinez, our police chaplain, is going to provide our invocation this evening. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Let's pray. O Lord, we will extol you. My God, O King, we will bless your name forever, and we will praise your name forever. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. One generation shall praise your works to another, and shall declare your mighty acts. Dear God, we ask for wisdom to be given to the mayor, to the city council. We ask for wisdom and blessing and protection for our police chief, our fire chief, for the departments, Lord, please protect them. We ask for blessing on our businesses here, that they would be prosperous. For our churches, Lord, that they would meet the spiritual needs of the people of this community. We pray for our schools, Lord, protect our children in our schools, in our city. Bless our teachers and those who work at the schools, Lord. And we pray for those who are struggling, homeless, with addictions, whatever it might be in this city, Lord. Please connect them with the right people, and may their lives change for the better this year. We ask for your blessing on the city of Monrovia, and we give you thanks for our lives. In your Son's most holy name, amen.
Amen. Okay, then we will proceed. I'm going to turn this over to the scouts to lead us in the pledge, and also I believe there's a couple of other items they're going to lead us in.
Troop 66. Troop 66.
I pledge allegiance.
Wait. I think we all need to stand.
Those in uniform, those in uniform, place your right hand over. Oh. Those in uniform, right. Those not in uniform, place your right hand over your heart, and those who are in uniform, place it like salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and in the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, by liberty and justice for all.
Do scout oath? Scout.
On my honor, I'll do my best to do my duty to God and to obey the Scout law, to help others at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight.
All right.
A scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent.
All right. I think we need to give them some
2.
applause.
Do you want to invite them?
Thank you for coming to this meeting tonight. We all thank you very much. We also invite you to our February 23rd of this year PAC 66 Monrovia Bridging. It will be held at the Elks Lodge in Duarte, and we hope you come there.
We'll be sure to get all the details and we'll share them. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I hope you come.
Thank you very much, Scouts. You definitely are friendly and respectful. Okay, can we please have our roll call?
Thank you.
Council members Belden,
Yes.
Jimenez.
Yes.
Spicer,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Kelly. Here. And Mayor Shevlin.
Here. Okay. Then we did not have a closed session this evening. Then our presentations and proclamations. Unfortunately, we do not have Kevin McManus with us this evening with a pet, and you can imagine why. The Pasadena Humane Society has really been working very, very hard to take in animals and keep them safe from the fires and whatnot, and reunite them with their families. And so due to the fire, all animal adoptions are on hold for 21 days, so their families may have the opportunity to reconnect with them. But I know before the fires, there was a great need to foster animals, and I'm sure that need is even greater now. So you might want to think about fostering a pet for anyone possibly that's lost their home and can't, even if they're reunited, they can't keep their pet with them right at this moment. But we keep the Pasadena Humane Society and all their volunteers and staff, we keep them in our hearts and prayers as well through this time. So we will move on to, is Mr. Gibson here and Mr. Tchiki. We have our recognition of City Traffic Engineer Pat Gibson, named Director of Venue Transportation for the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. And Mr. Tchiki will do the honors here.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's my honor and privilege to introduce you and the community to Pat Gibson. Pat is our city traffic engineer, so he has a very important role here for us. He's a trusted advisor. He reviews development plans for us, but he also advises on all things related to traffic. Late last year, I think late October, early November, Pat had shared with me that he was a finalist for the role as the Director of Venue Transportation for the 2028 Olympics. So we were able to provide a reference for him, and he was very shortly confirmed for the new role. And so Pat has taken that role on, and I think at the last council meeting, one of the council members had a comment about trying to find 2,000 buses. I don't think Pat has the answer for that yet, but Pat is going to lead the team to find that solution for us. And he's going to be certainly busy preparing for the 2028 games. So Pat, congratulations on your new title. City traffic engineer is still the most important one, but that's a pretty important role as well. And I believe the city has a recognition
Yes, we
for
do
you.
have a certificate here now. We'll read it very quickly here. City of Monrovia presented to Pat Gibson on behalf of the City of Monrovia, along with the City Council. We congratulate you on being named the Director of Venue Transportation for the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. This certificate acknowledges your hard work, dedication, and training to effectively become a leader in your field, qualified for this important position. We wish you success in your new assignment. And yes, that number of buses that they are estimating, I don't know how those are going to magically appear, but if there's anyone that can do it, you can. So can we come down and take or would you like to say anything first?
Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, My career has been over 50 years, very rewarding, very diverse. I've been able to work on major projects all over the United States and really all over the world. But the real goal of a traffic engineer is to really serve as a city traffic engineer. Our job is to get your kids home and to school and back home safely, to make sure that you as citizens of a community can move within your community safely and efficiently. And for me to be able to do that in my hometown has been a real joy. So thank you for the opportunity to allow me to be your city traffic engineer. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, it's an honor for us to have you, and let's take a picture here. You're in the center. Okay. We have the whole family. I'll mention as they're walking out, we did have our moment of silence at the beginning of the meeting, but there will be an update under the city manager's report regarding fire-related matters as well. So we are going to move on then to our student, yes? Oh, my goodness. Larry Spicer's birthday is on January 31st. Yay, Larry. And that one's for Larry. So are we going to light that one? Mr. Fire Chief?
Yes.
With the fire?
Happy birthday.
And then once he lights out, let's sing happy birthday to Larry on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Cha-cha-cha. Happy birthday to you. Cha-cha-cha. Happy birthday, dear Larry. Happy birthday to you. And many more.
Yeah, they're like, where's the cupcakes? No, thank you.
If they can, maybe you can share those with the Cub Scouts out there. Yeah.
They're gonna
Thank
just eat
you.
frenzy.
And happy birthday, Larry.
Thank you.
Okay, for our student government representative report, Jasmine, Rodriguez. Sorry about that. It starts with a J.
Good evening, Mayor Shevlin, members of the council, and members of the community. For my ARSB report, I would like to say that this Saturday, January 25th, we'll be hosting our winter formal dance, which is titled Winter Soiree. This event will be hosted on our very own campus. As well as we move into the middle of our winter sports season, our ASB team has been working on creating more and more posters on advertising our sports events and convincing student body to come and support their fellow students. Lastly, before we went into winter break and the week after we got back, our ASB and Renaissance team hosted Connection Weeks, where each tribe group within each class had an activity during lunch that allowed for us leaders to connect more with the student body, as well as give back to our students during times of stress like finals or after what happened when we came back after break. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for Jasmine? Well, thank you very much. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, but I know that you probably have lots of things going on, so please feel free. You can get to those as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any changes to the order of business? So then we will move on to the consent calendar, which are items CC1 through CC15, and those are considered ordinary and regular business and can be entertained under one motion. So if we have, unless someone needs to pull anything, we didn't get it, pull something for discussion, do we have a motion for approval?
So move. Second.
We have a motion and a second then, and so without objection, consent calendar is approved. Okay, then we are going right on over to public input, and I want to thank you for coming this evening. If there are, do we have some public comment forms? So this is your opportunity to speak to us on any item not on our agenda. So our city clerk has collected your cards. If you haven't filled one out, you can, you've got them up here, right?
I don't.
Oh, they're all in the back in the lobby. But at any rate, she will call you up, and please come forward, and we welcome your comments.
Beginning with Victor Franco.
Good evening, Victor.
Good evening, everyone. I was so pleased, Mayor Shevlin, that you took the time to honor those or respect the folks that were so affected by the fires. And that's one of my three things that I came to do and to say is, first of all, I want to congratulate and I want to thank our fire department for the tremendous work that they did in keeping that fire from reaching us. So they get a lot of kudos and they get a big applause. But I also want to applaud our police department, because the police department could not do the work that the fire department has done, or the fire department could not do the work that the police department is doing. So I'm so pleased that we have these two departments working for us and working so well. I also would like to, I think all of us, we hear it time and time again that we all know someone personally, indirectly. I have 17 friends, personal friends, that lost their homes in Altadena, and it's been very difficult. Obviously, they're starting from scratch. They're literally starting their lives all over again, and they're scampering, trying to find housing, trying to find insurance, health insurance, and all of the other things that we take for granted. And so one of our very own, as we all know, Tony Banuelos lost his home. And I was so pleased. I have been going to Jake's now, and I've gained maybe 4 pounds in the last week or so, because I have been going to Jake's to try and support him and try, let him know that we care about him. And I have been so impressed with the full house that he's had almost every evening that I've been there. I've called friends, and we've had 10 or 12 folks that have joined us simply to support Tony. And I want to remind everyone that it's not a one-time thing that we need to do. He lost everything, and thank God he's got the business. And like he said to me, he says the business is what's keeping him mentally sane, because it allows him to forget about the tragedy. So I'd like to remind Monrovians to let's keep supporting Tony. This is a long-term issue that he's having to deal with. And then the last thing is, most of us that live, well, I didn't indicate that I live at 808 Norumbega Drive, and most of us that live up on that very last street got the eviction notice or eviction, sorry. Evacuation notice, oh God. The evacuation notice at 4:30 in the morning. And it's an onerous a message that you get. All of us have heard it, and it's frightening, it's scary. And it basically said, we're in the path of a fast-moving fire, and you must evacuate now. And so it was very frightening. What happened is we packed, we had a couple of bags packed before, and we kind of anticipated that this might get ugly. And it did, but unfortunately it didn't get as ugly as it could have. But when we got the notice, the alarm, we immediately got into our cars. And there were other neighbors also exiting on Norumbega. The bad news is that not everyone evacuated. And but it also alarmed me because had everyone evacuated, particularly those folks that live deep into Norumbega Drive. As you know, it ends at Angeles Crest Forest, and there's a substantial number of residents that live in that area. And I'm just, figuring that if you multiply that times 4, in other words, per household, that's a large number of folks that are living in that area. And so my point is that they did not evacuate, not all of them. Some of them did, so there was some traffic as we were pulling out of our driveway. But it then occurred to me that we have a situation that could prove to be very, very deadly. There is no other exit for those folks to come out of Norumbega Drive. And so we've got all of those folks that, if we had to, would be creating a traffic problem that would make it difficult for all of us. Plus, the opposite side of Broad Oaks, that half of Norumbega Drive, those folks would also be exiting and coming down the very same intersection at Norumbega and Broad Oaks. So it occurred to me that it's not a matter of when, but or if, but when we're going to really need to look at how we create an exit, an additional exit, be it a temporary, a dirt road of some sort. I went up to visit with some of my neighbors, and at 982 Norumbega Drive, apparently there is a dirt road that has been used in the past. It's a private property. I don't. I'll give you the resident's name if you like, but I won't mention him. But it's a private property that has a dirt road that actually leads down into Bradbury. And I think that we need to figure out how we might be able to manage it, improve it, carve out a little bit more so that you may have two lane entrance and exit, because that is going to be critical for that half of Norumbega to be able to exit. And I think it would save a lot of lives if the city council would look at that. So again, that address is 982 Norumbega Drive.
Thank you.
Thank you
Victor.
so much.
Thank you.
Next up is Chris Luce. Luce.
Good evening, Chris.
Hey, good evening, Mayor, council, city staff. How y'all doing? Wow, it's been a minute, right? And it's been a lot that's happened this year. I'm here to start things off as the KGM community coordinator. Wanted to share what we got going on this Saturday. We're putting together a 5-hour broadcast. From 10 till 3, we'll be broadcasting live at the KGM studio. You are all invited to be there. It's 847 East Olive Drive. Thank you, Jocelyn and the MAP team, for helping us get the trailer out there. We want to share resources. Like the gentleman just shared, this is going to be a long-going thing. I have family as well that lost homes. So we're hoping to share resources, services, and ways people can help. Outside of GoFundMe's, there's ways you could spend time. And I think just knowing where trusted resources are is also important. So we're hoping to provide that. We want to build this 5-hour broadcast into a document that could also be shared with other people. So that'll be something that'll be at KGEM, and we'll share that as well. We want to encourage the community to come out, hang out. We'll have the cornhole and all the other games from the trailer out there to play and hang. But, if you know somebody impacted, just maybe have them come out. It's right outside there on Mountain, Olive Drive. There's a park. But there's something powerful that all of us here in Monrovia understand about each other and community and what can happen if we sit and we talk and we hang, and people are hurting right now, but to just smile and maybe talk about it. There's going to be people with resources there. So we're hoping it can be community. You can meet people, but also get a lot of great information. And the second thing I wanted to share, if you all want to save the date for the house party at the park 2, which is coming Sunday, March 16th. I'm going to go into all of your favorite Facebook groups here in Monrovia and post. We have a Google form. So Monrovians, any Monrovians that you're like, hey, so-and-so needs a shout, we'd love for you to nominate them so we can honor them at the M-Town Awards. And that is Sunday, March 16th. And everyone is invited. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Chris.
Next is Robert Hansen.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the City of Monrovia officials and Fire and Police Department for keeping us all safe and informed during the fires. I have a couple of suggestions. The first is if there's a way for the city manager, when the newsletter goes out and something like this, to provide a link or have a map of all the zones in Monrovia. Because I would think that most people don't realize what zone or region they're in when they see evacuation reports. For example, I'm in MNV 407, and when you go to Watch Duty or Genesis apps, those are the zones that come up or under evacuation or evacuation watch, and it's just listed with those numbers. And it's hard to figure out what your number is. So it'd be nice if there was a link and that had a map of Monrovia and separated in the different regions. That would help Monrovians be able to read those apps and know whether they're affected or not. The second thing is on Nexile.com, where you can get alerts, does not list the Monrovia Police. I see Sierra Madre, Arcadia, I put in my zip code, but Monrovia Police did not appear as an option. So please look into that and see why that is. And the third thing is I saw the notice on the city manager's report about picking up tree branches and leaves, leaving leaves in plastic bags. I had done that, left them out at the curb for about 2 weeks with no pickup. So today, I saw a guy from Athens, a truck driver, and I asked him, are you guys picking this up? And he said no, that I'd had to call for a bulk pickup, which is a completely different thing. So I forget how I found out, but I called the Public Works and gave them my address, and they're going to come pick it up. But I asked that you be a little more clear on how this is going to work. If there's a delay due to all the work that needs to be done, please let Monrovians know that, hey, we see the trash and we just need a little more time. A lot of people are putting out branches without bundles. It's not clear whether they should be bundled or not. Some are at the side of the road. So if you could be a little more clear so that people understand what exactly is. But I do have a question. Is Athens picking that up, or is that Public Works?
I tell you what, he's going to have an update here in just a minute, and I'll let him address all of those all at one time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay? Thank you. Any other,
I have
oh,
another
yes.
card. Brian Saki.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. It does feel strange sitting on this side of the dais. I'm usually up there with you all, and so I vowed not to do this, but here I am. So, again, thank you for the opportunity to address the council tonight. Again, being in this line of work, I know that it's not often that we receive public appreciation, and so I did want to share something about your amazing staff. First, Dylan, incredible job on your updates. I took a lot of what you do and incorporated into what I do in Whittier, and so you do a fantastic job. It's tough to guess and foresee all the questions that are going to come up, especially in a time like we just went through. And so we do appreciate the open lines of communication, and your city manager's newsletter has been fantastic, so thank you. But I did want to share an experience with you tonight, and my wife Monica and I are here to acknowledge the incredible life-saving work performed by the Monrovia Police and Fire Departments. In particular, Agent Nicole Zapata, Agent Charles Perez, Officer Sean Wang, and Officer Carlos Alvarez. There were other fire department personnel there. Unfortunately, we were not able to get the names of the men and women that were there that night, but we want to acknowledge and thank them as well. So briefly, around 4 p.m. on Tuesday, January 7th, before all, broke loose, our neighbor directly to the north of us had a attic fire, and it ripped through his house. And so it was so crazy that my neighbors and our friends were calling us frantically because we were both at work, saying that our house was on fire because the fire and the embers were shooting over our own home. So it was a very scary time. So again, lots of calls and text messages. We went, of course, on our Ring apps like we all do, and come to find out that these 4 officers were first knocked on our front door to make sure there was nobody home. But of course, we've got 2 crazy dogs that, of course, greeted them like they do most strangers. And despite that, they went into our backyard. You see the Ring footage is crazy. It's just smoke and embers and things. It really looked like our house was on fire. But it did not sway your officers. They went right into our backyard. Of course, our chocolate lab is willing to go with anybody. In fact, any of you that want to walk him, you're more than welcome to do that because he will go with any of you in this room. But we have a very protective German Shepherd. And Hank was who I was most worried about. We were most worried about because he's not the friendliest of dogs. It didn't stop the officers at all. And so 4 of them went in there. Of course, Otis went out with no problem, but Hank took a little bit of convincing. You had an officer, I think it was Nicole Zapata. She had to poke her head into our doggy door in our house, into a completely strange dog and environment. And she grabbed him, yanked him out of there, and took him out to the street and got him situated. And so they really saved their lives because they were very, very anxious, needless to say. And when we got home, I think they're still sort of recovering from that experience. But anyways, I did want to thank all of the first responders, especially those who saved Otis and Hank. And I know you're busy tonight, so we won't take most of your time, but we felt it was really important that we, get out here in front of you and just to say thank you and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that it really, really needs to be pointed out, that fire, it was on Stedman and around Scenic there, and it
Yes.
just, and the winds were coming down, and the fire department saved all the houses around it, contained it to that one structure, and so they did an absolutely phenomenal job. My house isn't too far away from it, and the smoke and everything was just really crazy,
Yeah,
so.
they did.
Yes.
You had 80-mile-an-hour winds,
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
it was.
And it
pretty
was
scary.
going south.
It was.
Not
it
a good
was.
thing.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you again very much.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you to our fire and PD. It was right at the start of them, that Tuesday. Okay, anyone else wanting to address our city council under public comment? Okay, then we will close our public comment then, and we are going to move on to our public hearings. PH1, proposed 51st year Community Development Block Grant Funding Program. So we do have Jesse Wu. Come on down, Jesse.
Good evening, Mayor Shevlin and members of City Council. Tonight, I will be presenting the CDBG program's annual allocation for fiscal year 2025-2026. So first, I would like to touch on the CDBG funding process, which begins with the Department of Housing and Urban Development Authority, also known as HUD. HUD then carries funds into the Community Development Block Grant Program, or CDBG. CDBG, in short, provides annual grants on a formula basis to states, cities, and counties, primarily for low to moderate income individuals. Once the formula has been completed, the Los Angeles County Development Authority, or LACDA, takes over the administration of CDBG funds with the 45 non-entitlement communities throughout the county, of which we, the City of Monrovia, are a participating city. Then, as a participating city, the City of Monrovia receives the new fiscal year's CDBG annual allocation from LACDA and presents those funds to City Council for approval. Once approved, implementation of funds to approved programs is initiated. For fiscal year 2025-2026, the City of Monrovia is tentatively set to receive an estimated CDBG allocation of $242,871. This is $30,412 more than the city received in fiscal year 2024-2025, which is approximately a 12% increase. The budgeted amount would include administration fees paid to the city's project consultant not to exceed 20% of the grant funding allocation. The overall mission of the CDBG program are these three items listed, which is to improve the quality of life for people of low to moderate income, aid in the prevention of neighborhood deterioration, and meet any other urgent community needs. With the great direction of the City Council, CDBG has remained one of the most effective forms of federal assistance available to us. Here, you can see the low to moderate income census tracts and block groups located throughout Monrovia. Each of these are determined low to moderate income if the block group's population is above 51% low to moderate income. This statistical data is collected through the American Community Survey, which is an ongoing survey by the U.S. Census Bureau. In this process, LACDA requires a summary of the projected use of our CDBG annual allocation by February of 2025. Under the guidance of the City Council, which increased funding allocation from 40% to 100% in the last fiscal year, CDBG currently funds one program, which is the Residential Rehabilitation Program. The Residential Rehab Grant provides assistance to families with low to moderate income to provide free home repairs and code corrections for those who cannot afford to make them. This budget would provide a goal of 6 to 7 grants throughout the fiscal year. During fiscal year 24-25, the program opened for new applicants in July, and staff received an impressive 43 applications during the eligibility intake phase. Due to rising costs and heightened interest, there is a community need to continue the program at 100% of the City of Monrovia's CDBG allocation. As an example of a recently completed residential rehab project, here is a before and after where you can see a roof replacement and exterior paint job. In the end, our property owner was grateful for this program and the overall outcome of their home. So here are some additional recently completed projects. On the far left, you'll see a door replacement addressing wood rot. In the center, a roof replacement, and on the right, the removal and installation of new rain gutters. Again, thanks to City Council's decision to allocate 100% of funds to the residential rehab program, we are on track to complete 6 projects this fiscal year, doubling the 3 projects we were previously able to complete with past funding levels. So at the current funding allocation of 100% of our CDBG funds toward the Res Rehab program, this would equate to $242,871 of the proposed budget. While staff's proposal is based on current funding and percentages, the city may choose to modify their proposed use of their allocation. As previously stated, staff received 43 residential rehab grant applications this past fiscal year, and we were able to approve 6 projects. CDBG programs are crucial to the city's overall neighborhood improvement strategy, and the use of CDBG funds has no negative impact on the city's general fund. Additional modification to this proposed budget may be made during the city's own fiscal year 25-26 budget planning process. So following the public hearing, staff recommends that the City Council adopt the resolution. That concludes my report. I would be happy to answer any questions at this time. Thank you.
Questions
I
of
have
staff?
questions.
Yes.
What do we do to let the public know that this program is available?
Yes. So in July, that's typically when the program looks for new applicants, and we'll do the marketing for that. So we'll put it in the city manager's update. We'll create our own flyers for it, and yeah, just
Do you walk neighborhoods in Monrovia and talk to the residents, or do you send a mailer to them, or what do you do?
Yes, so it's right now it's mainly on like social media and on the city manager's update, kind of like digital advertising. But yeah, we would consider going out into the neighborhoods and doing that as well.
Or sending a mailing out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a few. Thank you so much for the presentation. Really great job.
Thank you.
Along the lines of what Councilmember Jimenez was asking, do we approach the folks that we know may have, we've talked to over the past year that may have some code conflicts and some challenges? Do we talk to them about this program?
Yes, so our code officers do keep an eye out on like the properties that do need a little bit more assistance, and then they would tell us. And then we also do have like an ongoing list of people who have applied in the past who might not have gotten it. And then we look at that list, and then if they reapplied, then we consider that as well as a factor.
Have you ever considered doing some of the communication in Spanish?
Yes, I believe this public hearing was like listed in Spanish. And then, yeah, we would like to have Spanish speaking on our flyers as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for?
Just curious how the program works once someone's selected. Do they hire their own contractor, or do we hire the contractor?
We hire the contractors. Yeah, so we do have a list of contractors, and then we do request for proposals, or our consultant would do that for us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So Jesse, in the report, it was talking about the consultant wanting to just charge just a base fee of $5,000?
Yes. So that is so the consultant gets 20% of the
Right.
allocation. They just kind of want to streamline the process better. So then on both ends, we would know like monthly how much to anticipate for each project, and then they also can just kind of bill us per project as well.
So what is the average project cost?
It can range from 20 to 25,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there a carryover to the next fiscal year? Are you able
Yes.
to carry over?
Yes.
You are?
So yeah, if
Okay.
we have any unused funds, it will carry over to the next fiscal
Okay.
year.
Thank you. Good report.
Now, I noticed that you had, what was it, 43 applicants,
Yes.
but there was only like 6 or 7 that were approved.
Right. Yeah.
What can we do to get more money so we can get more projects approved?
So that's really up to LACTA. We are allocated a certain like amount of funds each fiscal year, and it really varies. So if we have rollover, then that'll contribute to the amount of funds that we can use and everything like that. But
We don't have control then over,
no,
there's
we
nothing
don't.
we can do to increase the amount of money that we're getting from it?
It's actually amazing that it went up this year.
yeah, yeah,
It used to only be $100 and some thousand dollars.
yeah.
So we're doing good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and council, last year, you guys already did 100% of funds towards res rehab, so that really helped increase the number of projects we were able to do as well.
Okay, it's just that there's a lot of need. If 43 people are applying, only 6 are getting it.
Yeah, but we're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there.
$242,871 doesn't go as far as it used to.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I could, I don't mean to interrupt, but
Part of the challenge with this is it's all based on a federal formula allocation that for cities under 50,000 population, this is the amount that you're awarded, and it gets divvied out that way, and that's nationwide. If you are a larger community, you're what's referred to as an entitlement community, and then that amount is different, and you're able to use it for different types of uses. Over the years, one of the challenges we originally had was reaching people. There are times where we would receive, less than 10 applications. So as the city has prioritized marketing and messaging, also put more money into the actual rehab, we've also seen more interest grow. And so, getting up to 43, it's what we like to call a nice problem to have. There's this decision point we have to make between, do we fix a roof, and while we're doing the roof, do we do the windows and the doors and the paint? Or do we just do, a roof for you and a new air conditioner for you and kind of spread the money out? And I think that's something we're always trying to evaluate. And this year, with the new department director, I've asked Sherry to look at things with a fresh set of eyes. Let's bring that forward to City Council to see, because now's a great opportunity for us to make a change if we need to. The other thing I would point out is just because we received an application does not necessarily mean they qualify for use of the funds. We still have to do income verification. The projects would still need to be deemed eligible. So while we did receive 53 applications, we're not sure how many of them would have qualified to participate in the program.
Okay, any other questions? This is a public hearing, and so I will open it to the public. Do we have anyone wanting to speak on this matter, either for or against? If you could come forward to the podium. You are speaking for or?
For, but I saw some of the projects, and 20,000 and 25,000 sound kind of high. For a roof, maybe 10, 12,000. So I'm wondering, are you guys taking bids?
Yes, our consultant.
Okay, that's my only.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wanting to speak either for or against? Not seeing any, then I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the city council. And we do have a staff recommendation to approve the CDBG residential rehabilitation program as outlined in the report.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2025-05.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second and a third. Could we please have a, yes, thank you. And Dylan, I might ask then if we could put that maybe on our directives list, maybe looking into some ways that we could maybe supplement the program. Yeah. Okay, we will move on then to PH2, which is fiscal year 2023-24 annual mitigation fee report and traffic impact fee update. And we have this evening Sherry Bermejo, our Community Development Director, who will present that report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Shevlin and members of the City Council. Every January, the Community Development Department brings you the annual traffic impact fee report. We also propose a fee adjustment resolution, and this is for the City Council's consideration. As the City Council is aware, the city approved and adopted a transportation impact fee ordinance in 2019. That ordinance was approved in accordance with the state's.
Can I ask? Okay, there it goes. I was
so
going to
sorry.
say, are we going to watch Tamla and myself?
Was that on the big screen?
Yeah, we were on the big screen. Okay.
All right, so this transportation impact fee was approved and adopted in 2019 in accordance with the state's Mitigation Fee Act. And what it allows is for the city to impose fees on new developments in order to fund improvements, traffic improvements, so that the system maintains its existing service levels. Now, the TIF funds are special funds. They're not part of the general fund. They're earmarked for transportation improvements that were identified in a Nexus study when the ordinance was adopted. The traffic improvements are all located south of Huntington Drive, and they include several items, including traffic signalization improvements, new equipment, new signal installation, and improvements to right-of-way modifications, which could be striping and to add a dedicated turn lane, for example. The ordinance has provisions that allow the city council to increase the fee based on changes to the California Construction Cost Index, and that's the metric that kind of measures the average cost increases to make those improvements, covers the cost of labor, materials, and equipment. Any type of fee adjustment does require a public hearing, and tonight this public hearing was duly noticed. And there is a recommended fee increase for your consideration of a total of $59. So it would change the fee from $2,575 to $2,034. And this fee is applicable to projects that generate additional new PM peak hour trips. And that's generally when a use of a land use is most busiest and burdensome on the roadway. This fee is implemented through the adoption of a resolution, and if it is approved, it would go into effect 60 days following tonight's hearing, which is March 24th, 2025. Now, in addition to this fee resolution, we are providing you with the traffic impact fee annual report. This report was published on the city's website and in the city clerk's office. It's a requirement of the Mitigation Fee Act, and it's also required to contain certain specified information, including the purpose of the fee, how it's used, the amount of the fee, the current fund balance, the public improvements that have been funded through the use of the fees, and then any transactions, financial transactions related to the Traffic Impact Fee Fund. So for the fiscal year 23-24, the beginning balance for this fund was $680,512. Over the course of this last fiscal year, we collected $157,169. Fees attributed to those fees collected were related to the Station Square South project. The city also earned some interest off of that, and the current balance is $867,598. Now, to this point, the city has not expended any of those fees. However, in this next fiscal year, we have several traffic signal improvements that are planned, and this is going to be along Myrtle and Magnolia, south of Huntington Drive. So in this next January, you will see that these funds will be drawn down from. So that concludes my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Bermejo?
I had a few. Thank you so much for the presentation. First question is, I believe the funds don't come in until the project reaches a certain threshold of completion. Is that correct?
That is correct. They're not required, the developer is not required to pay them until the final C of O, or certificate of occupancy, is issued. However, what we do find from time to time is the developers just want to pay the fee early, and that was the case with Station Square South.
And there's still quite a few projects under construction right now, so I assume some of those are going to
Correct.
be, okay,
That is correct.
great, okay, thank you. And then last question, I'm sure there was a reason when we did the original traffic impact fee to make that location, but I know that housing is critically important to the city, and a lot of people are interested in housing development throughout the city now, in many commercial areas, residential areas, everywhere. I think it would behoove us to think about expanding our impact fee location, so it's not just in one area right now. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing, and so I will open it up to the public for comment. Is there anyone here wanting to speak either for or against on this item? Not seeing anyone, I will close the public hearing and come back to City Council. and I do believe we have a recommendation on this. Do we have a motion?
I
I'd
make a
like to make-
motion. Go ahead. Go
You
ahead.
go right ahead, sir.
You sure?
Yeah.
No, you. Oh, you haven't, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sherry.
So Sherry, regarding what Edward had asked you about moving it to another location, is that just housing? Would
So-
it just have to deal with housing or?
No, right now, this transportation impact fee is applicable to any non-residential development that's 1,000 square feet or more.
Oh, okay.
Or any multifamily residential project that's 5 or more units.
Okay.
It would require reopening our nexus study,
Mhm.
doing some traffic studies to align with creating a fee
Mhm.
and what areas, what projects it's going to be used for. So there's a process to do it that we would need to look into.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does our motion still stand in our second?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-01, approving the annual report for fiscal year 2023-24 and increasing the TIF by 2.3%.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Could we please have a roll call vote?
Councilmembers Belden?
Yes.
Jimenez?
Yes.
Spicer?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem
Yes.
Dr. Kelly? And Mayor Shevlin?
Yes. Thank you very much. And we will now move on to our reports of city manager and staff, and we will start off with Mr. Feek.
Yes, thank you. For tonight, I'd like to just highlight that I'll add to the directives log feedback to City Council related to the CDBG program. We'll look at additional ways to either supplement what are some of the criteria we use to approve it, but I think that marketing and outreach is also a key piece to that. So I'll add that to the directives log. We have several items that, as we now get back into the swing of the new year and having regular meetings, we're past the holidays, there'll be a lot of items coming back to City Council for upcoming decisions, for just reports back, things like crime data, bringing back inclusionary housing. We have our assessment fee study, a lot of big juicy items coming up in the weeks and meetings to come. I'd like to, at this point, go to my RCM2 item. Thank you, Lauren, for running this over. If you could bring up the PowerPoint presentation. Perfect. Bear with me because I'm looking at this screen, and that screen. As we go through this presentation, I want to give a quick recap of the City of Monrovia's response during what we call the January 2025 windstorm and critical fire event. This is the terminology that we're using in different disaster proclamations. It's similar to what other cities, the state, and even the federal government are using. Before I get into that and kind of give an overview, I want to specifically address some of Mr. Hansen's questions. First, related to trash pickups, I'd encourage people sign up for the city manager's weekly newsletter. In events like emergencies, we use it far more often than weekly. It's been our best source of information we can get out to the public, but it also goes from the subscribing to the newsletter, goes on to social media. People become informed and they're able to now share with their neighbors and residents and answer questions themselves. In the last several updates, we've been providing information on the trash pickup. As we've said before, the last update we provided, the city will continue to go around town and pick up the debris. There's over 100 lane miles of streets. There's far more debris than we had anticipated. There's also a severe shortage of the roll-off dumpsters available. So thus far, we've collected over 1,000 yards of large trash debris, which is the equivalent of about 25 full roll-off dumpsters. And we're maybe close to halfway through picking up all the debris. So we're calling in all the extra hands on deck from some of our contract partners, all of our extra city staff, part-time, to try to make our way through the city. Athens is not doing the additional trash pickup. If you can fit it in the green bin, they'll get it. We've been very consistent with that message. We'll continue to share that message. We've also asked people to put their leaves in small clippings, fill the green bin the extent you can, put them in bags where you can't, don't just pile them up. Our crews are reporting back that people are just doing long 15-yard piles of limbs and debris, and that slows them down. So part of the reason why we're unable to get there as quickly as we can is just because we're getting slowed down by the way we have to pick it up. But we're going to continue to do that. I would expect in a future city manager update, we'll tell residents no longer put it out on the curb, especially in anticipation of upcoming rainfall. I want to talk a little bit about Nixle Alert. Nixle is a subscription-based service. You have to go in and subscribe to the notification in order to use it. City of Monrovia doesn't like the subscription-based tools. We want to be able to push information out to people whether you subscribe or not. If you're a non-resident, if you're a resident and aren't subscribed, if you're a visitor or a guest, if you're shopping in town. Lauren and the team has also been working with the fire chief, the police chief, to implement a system that's called Rave. Rave is a non-subscription based tool that we can push information out directly to every cell phone within a geographic area defined in the city. It's a fairly new program that is available to us as of early last year. We've been implementing it into our emergency protocols, but we just aren't quite ready to use it. In that Rave system, we went through and identified these different zones, or like was mentioned earlier, MRV 100 or MNR, whatever the acronym is. We identify these different zones. And what that allows us to do is we can push out noticing to every cell phone within the geographic area. Sometimes it bleeds over, usually does bleed over, but we can pinpoint where we want messaging to go out to directly. And that's very important for us. And it was this technology that was available was something that LA County started using very early on with this recent disaster. The city of Monrovia did not issue any evacuation orders. As the council is aware, and I'll share in a few minutes, there's a lot of confusion because we would be having discussions with Incident Command about, warnings. Maybe we put this community, this area under a warning, and a notice would get sent out without us even knowing that, hey, the whole northern half of Monrovia is now under evacuation order. And so there was just a lot of confusion that was happening, and that'll be part of our aftermath and follow-up. So let me go through now a little bit about the kind of the incident. First and foremost, I want to talk a little bit about how the city of Monrovia, and specifically the city council, demonstrates our 4 values. I think this is so critical during an incident like this. As the council aware, the public may not be, city of Monrovia has 4 values: humble, hungry, loyal, and smart. And everything we do at the staff level, from hiring to promotions, to disciplinary matters, to even our annual awards and recognition, we always look to our values. So the value of humility is really about thinking less of yourself, more about others. How are we building a strong team? A lot of that work happens long before the incident. Council is attending conferences together. I wish I could share this photo of, we attended a League of California Cities conference back in September of last year. And myself, a few of our staff members were sitting there realizing that all 5 of our council members were sitting in front of us in the same row together at a conference of 2,000 elected officials in the state. I guarantee we were the only city in the state of California that had all 5 council members sitting next together. From the retreats we do to last couple weeks, as you visited the Emergency Operations Center, you brought snacks, you checked in on staff. That's all about building a strong team, showing humility. Loyalty, we speak to loyalty about why we're here. We exist to serve the people of Monrovia, to create a community that offers premier quality of life. Allocating resources and budget. We heard tonight that we had this wonderful staff respond to a fire incident on Stedman Place. Well, when the incident was unrolling, I walked over to the police station and I went into the watch commander's office, and on his desktop, he had all the body camera footage from our police officers who were responding to the fire. Our officers are trained that if they show up to a fire or show up to an incident and there's nothing for them to do, turn your camera on and just watch and be the eyes on the ground for the command staff back at dispatch or at the police station. So I watched as Officer Spada was coughing as she came out of the building. And we have staff that are able to flag her and say, let's make sure and get her checked out as soon as we can. And when we had discussions about budget allocations, the city council said, absolutely, if this is going to make us better, help us improve, let's do it. I think that's so critical when our first responders, police, fire, but even public works, planning staff, code enforcement, when they're out in the field, they have everything they need to do their jobs because you made the decision months, if not years ago. You can see some other items. I want to now move on to the presentation slides. So Sunday night, Fire Chief Jeremy Sanchez is getting briefed by several different National Weather Service, several other agencies, and here's basically the report. They say that we're going to have damaging wind, extreme fire weather throughout Los Angeles, Ventura counties. Here's what you can expect. It's going to be widespread. We're going to, plan for downed trees. So by Monday morning, we're already mobilizing, preparing our equipment, filling our, vehicles with gasoline, making sure our water tanks are all full. And here's kind of an image that they show based on time of day, or based on the day, based on the area where you reside. The weather patterns are different at the ocean, on the coast, valleys, mountains, so on and so forth. This January 5th briefing on a Sunday showed that it's going to be pretty damaging weather, and it's going to affect largely Ventura counties, Los Angeles coastal areas to some extent. But by the next day, they upgraded their chart and said, look, this is going to impact everyone much more significantly than we thought. A lot of these zones go from red to purple, or from orange to red or purple, which just basically increases the severity. So at that point, we really started to mobilize knowing that this is going to hit Monrovia as well. So a lot of the activities we do for the event, as I mentioned earlier, we're staffing equipment, we're calling in all the extra bodies. One thing that was interesting, Verdugo, which does our fire dispatch, they were so inundated with calls, they had to shut off all of the phone calls for fire dispatching and basically turn those back over to the local agency. So we had to have one of our division chiefs staffed in the dispatch center so that he could take all these fire-related calls and dispatch them directly to Monrovia. There was just no other way that Verdugo was going to safely and efficiently direct all of their dispatch calls to fire departments across the region. Public Works is already undertaking work from filling reservoirs, preparing for any kind of cleanup, outages. They're going to have street closures. We're going to have fallen trees, making sure everything is ready to go. But we talk a lot about police and fire and even Public Works, but community services. They take action. Let's close the Hillside Wilderness Preserve. Later on, they operated information centers, made sure people had food, charging locations, water, and even just friendship and a way to socialize after people have been out of power for 2+ days. Edison began issuing notices for potential public safety power shutoffs. We had activated the Emergency Operations Center, which is always at the community policing room, set up phone lines, brought out paper files just in the event that this gets worse than we thought. And of course, the city manager's office immediately started pushing out information about conserving water, about preparing for the emergency and planned outages. By Tuesday, our first outages in Monrovia were reported around 2 p.m. We still don't have data yet from Edison on how many outages calls we received, but it would have been in the thousands. We lost power at several city facilities. Immediately, one of our first actions is begin placing generators at all of our pumping stations to make sure we have water supply. Normally, when we have 1 day of an outage, we have enough water supply to hold us through, but in anticipation of multiple days of outages, let's make sure and get everything up and running on backup. Of course, we had wildfires reported in neighboring communities, which had us all on significant alert. The Palisades fire began sometime early morning of January 7th, and the Eaton fire broke out around 6:18 p.m. on the 7th as well, which very quickly made its way eastward. And I'm not going to speak to all the damage and destruction, but I think it just, we're all watching and we'll continue to watch how those unfold. But for purpose of the presentation, I'm just going to focus on Monrovia. We had a lot of calls for service. I'm going to talk a little bit about those calls here in just a moment. So in addition to responding to all these calls, Monrovia Fire Department is assisting with fires. The one on the left was a fire that started in Arcadia. The one on the right is a fire that started in Sierra Madre. These are Monrovia staff working on these fires. We had, in addition to the power outages, we had homes that were without power through the entire week. The last homes were restored in the Hidden Valley, Low Tone, and kind of Cloverleaf areas on Saturday afternoon, January 11th. I want to talk a little bit about the damaged structures. Monrovia did have 5 structures which suffered damage, some with fire damage, others with tree damage. I'm going to go over some of these impacts and show some photos here in just a moment. Just definition of red tag, if you're not sure what it is, it's where the building official comes in and determines that a building is unsafe for occupancy. We occasionally have to do that. In this case, 450 Stedman Place, this was the story we heard earlier today from Mr. Psyche. This structure fire broke out in the evening of Tuesdays, January 7th. The crews were literally battling this fire when the winds were gusting at 80 miles an hour. It was an incredible feat. They did a phenomenal job. They were up there a lot longer than they normally would be, but to keep that confined to that one house was, as they would call it, it was a major save and a major win. They deserve a lot of amazing credit. We had another fire at 813 Naples Avenue. This was another structure fire on that same day. This fire, we were able to get out and get red tagged. I'll point out what we're doing with these red tags here in just a moment. We had an issue on 1211 Encino. This was some structure damage when tree limbs fell over on a person's property and makes the property uninhabitable and dangerous. We had we had a situation with an appliance fire and just a lot of debris on site that we wanted to clean up. This was at 1024 Royal Oaks. And then lastly, another large tree. This is directly across the street from the high school. Large tree fell on a multifamily housing complex. And the last I was there, this tree was still there, but that building has been red tagged as well. So our immediate needs, Sherry brought into the team. She brought our on-call building official. Interestingly, our regular building official was out on paternity leave. They just had a baby, one that we honored tonight when the meeting convened. But Sherry had already taken the steps to have a building official on site available to help and kind of became the go-to during the emergency event. We're expediting any kind of plan review, plan check, inspections to get them back into their homes. That's going to be our immediate priority, is hopefully addressing the red tags and getting them back in as quickly as possible. Tonight, earlier this evening on your consent calendar, you approved a proclamation of existence of local emergency. Essentially, when we have significant and extended emergencies like this, we always proclaim a local disaster. This is a necessary tool to seek state and federal assistance. We're going to talk a little bit about how the incident has impacted Monrovia. Thus far, we've submitted an initial damage estimate of $1,051,629 to the city of Monrovia. This specifically is around the cost for debris removal and cleanup, as well as emergency protective measures like staffing the Emergency Operations Center, providing police and fire response all during the emergency. So that's the number that we'll submit to the area. We expect a significant, if not 100% of this amount, to be fully reimbursed by the federal government. I want to show you some pictures now of the Hillside Wilderness Preserve. We are not at this time completely sure the cost to repair the preserve. A decision was made early on to install some dozer lines within the preserve to protect in the event that the Eaton fire had moved further east past the Bobcat Burn area and came into Monrovia. We've had some preliminary discussions and meetings on site and expect it could meet or even exceed $1 million. And I'll show you some photos. So taken from the Sunset Bench back in early 2024, you can see a photo on the left. Some of this area had been graded back during the Bobcat fire, but on the right, you'll see the new dozer lines that were put in. They're very wide swaths of area that they put in to try to keep the fire, if it did come eastward, to keep it eastward away from the homes. This is an area we refer to as, it's a switchback area, where it's a single track trail, and I believe there's 16 different switchbacks. But with these large dozers, they just go straight up it. And so it's going to be a lot of individual handwork with the shovel, kind of redoing these trails. And that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time, and kind of a repeated effort, because as we have more rain and erosion, we're going to see more damage. As you can see, that flat area, water is just going to, when it rains, it's just going to wash out and create a lot of mess for us to clean up. This photo is kind of hard to tell because the orientation's wrong, but on the photo on the left, this was last year. We held the Horseless Carriage Club up in the preserve, where annually they come up on the same day as the Old Homes Tour, and they drive through those old dirt road trails in their old, Model Ts and old classic cars. And where they're sitting right now, if you look on the right picture, is that big open spot down at the bottom. So this area that had, some coast live oak trees and a lot of native vegetation, they've since put a very large, brand new, groomed fuel break down there. We're certainly grateful and happy that the fire did not enter into Monrovia. But I think what's important to us is now that the fire is no longer a threat to Monrovia, we want to work with our counterparts to try to restore this area so that residents can continue to enjoy it as a preserve. An additional photo of a walking path trail that's now been made 10 to 15 times larger. At this point, we'll continue to coordinate with federal, state, regional partners for assistance. A lot of the work we're going to try to do, we want to do within 180 days of the emergency proclamation. This is because that's the timing. It's most likely to be reimbursed under the federal designation. So we're going to have to work quick to put together the plan, the bid documents, and even get the preliminary approvals to move forward and repair that work. I also want to point out that much like any disaster or incident, we always do after-action reports. We talk with our staff, what worked well, what could we do better. We want to do these with some of our regional partners. Edison, LA County, even neighboring cities all have some great feedback to share. City Council is going to be having a discussion early next week, even have a staff meeting tomorrow with the department directors. And those are all some things that'll help lead and guide discussions down the road. Last but not least, my contact information I always like to include, as well as subscription to City Manager's update. So that's my report on this item. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question. Is it safe to say that the federal government will bear the entire bill?
Is it safe to say? I don't know. I will tell you that we've already had a change in presidential administrations since the incident happened. The previous administration said the federal government will cover 100% of eligible costs for the incident. It's yet to be determined if the new administration is going to change. I think one of the reasons we're moving so fast to push all the information, get it submitted and get it in, is that now it's all there and hopefully we can start working through the process. But we don't know. And to be very, to be the most fair and most safe, we're still working on reimbursements for the December 2021 storms that damaged Canyon Park.
Now, there's a lawsuit that's been filed against Southern California Edison. Are we even considering being involved in the lawsuit? Specifically, we've all seen images of the power towers in Altadena that had apparently an explosion. There's video online available. It's public knowledge. And it's already been filed, this lawsuit. Is there any consideration by either City of Monrovia or other municipalities in that lawsuit?
At this point, it would just be speculation of mine to say that other cities are considering it. I don't know. Much like we have in the past, that's been a conversation that we've had, myself with the city attorney. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion and debate in the weeks and months to come about that. They won't officially determine the cause of the fire for some time. That's pretty typical. They do a full investigation on something like this. And I'd expect that conversation will happen. We have time, and I certainly don't think it's something we need to be deciding now, but certainly it could be something the city considers in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Dylan? I did have a couple, and these are more along the lines of our directives, and then I know that we will be meeting, obviously, as a council to discuss this later, but back in October, you had disseminated information from Edison, and they set up a liaison, or supposedly a strengthened, or I don't know how you describe it, communication for electeds. And that really didn't happen. And I got frustrated because, and I know talking to individuals, you'd put in your address about your power outage, and on at least 2 occasions, they said my address didn't exist. And also, there was a lot of confusion about the PS, is that what it is? Okay. And it said that although we were subject to it, there was no turnoff for our area under that involvement. So just a lot of confusion. So I would hope that, I would think they would have learned something from the 2011 windstorm, but that we can do something to really strengthen the communication, because I eventually sent them an email that I, with all due respect, told them that their website was worthless to me and provided no information. So at any rate, but since they offered, they had extended that to us, and I just don't see how it provided any additional service for us. And then there was a lot, not here, but there was a lot of discussion about water, both as availability and quality and whatnot. I know that our water, and you reiterated that under your reports, that our water is good, but we have not had rainfall now since April. And so at what point, I know that we're in a fairly good, Dr. Fellow from the San Gabriel Valley Upper District said that our reserves are good, but it is pretty scary to think that we haven't had any measurable water since April, and I don't know that we've got a whole lot in the forecast. So how that all just plays out for availability for, emergencies and for all sorts of things.
Typically, around springtime and maybe into beginning of summer, we have Alex do kind of a state of our water report. Sometimes we've even offered in the the San Gabriel Valley Upper Municipal Water District to come in and do a presentation and provide a status of their ongoing discussions. They do have what they call producers meetings that happen monthly. And so what I'll probably do is let me get them on the schedule so they can come and present to City Council kind of a state of our water. And I think that'll just help answer some questions, even give you information as you talk with residents and think about these issues.
And I think everyone can agree that we need some work on the regional orchestration of notification. I mean, that was pretty wild. And that Nixa was mentioned, I finally took it off my phone because I couldn't filter it enough to get what I wanted out of it. And I was getting Nixa alerts constantly. So I think that would really be great if we had that more concentrated, that we could push out to our areas and not be a subscription. And last but not least, I did talk to at least one disabled person who was terribly confused as to what was going on and what notifications. And I know that through our CERT and through our fire department, we do have, but they have to let us know where they live. I mean, they have to identify themselves so that we can go out and contact them. So if we can do something more to make that more obvious, or to get people to sign up for that service so that we know who we need to contact
I agree with the mayor. I've talked to some of the survivors of the Eaton fire that lived in southern Altadena, and they said, you were on your own. It was 2:30 in the morning. There was no police or county sheriffs or anybody telling the neighbors. They did not get a cell alert or anything. Okay, they woke up at 2:30 in the morning because they smelled smoke inside their house. They opened the door and they see ash complete with embers raining down on the neighborhood. They had to knock on the doors yelling at people to get up, and then they had to get out. I think that's key. We've got to make sure that we learn from this tragedy and use it as an opportunity to make sure that this doesn't happen in Monrovia, because it just as easily could have happened in Monrovia.
Yeah, and I know that we can get later into a deeper debrief, but I just wanted to highlight those things.
Just one thing, Madam
Uh-huh.
Mayor. Well, thank you for the report and the hard work that you all have done. And I think a lot of good points have been made today, and just one thing maybe to try to phrase it and work around is potentially putting out a resiliency plan for the city that takes into account steps we can take locally to really make sure we address those quick emergency needs, from simply solar panels and battery backup for a lot of our services, so we don't have to rely on fuel that may not be there in 2 days, 3 days, 4 days when they run out. Or, I mean, I even heard stories about some of the fire stations, that couldn't find gas for their engines because the electricity was out in Altadena. It's scary to think of, right? And then water, of course. I mean, fundamentally, we need to keep all the vital services, all the critical facilities. I hear the school district, I think, would also love to help out with us. They have many of those facilities, of course, as well. It's a great chance for us to also just go over our disaster plan, and we have so many people here that are willing to give their time, cert,
Right.
and map leaders, and so many. I think we could do a great job and just get prepared, because we've had, I mean, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, it was like 4 days out without power in some places in Monrovia, and this was at least 2 days. And if we have some of those even larger storms that really hit us hard, or an earthquake, or we have a lot of catastrophe potentially happening here, but we have a great community that could survive that. So love to see us look at that.
I think and to echo the sentiments that's been said thus far, I think we mitigated and handled this emergency so well. But also learning from other communities so that we don't get comfortable, not that you are or that we are, but that we don't get comfortable and sit back and be great, be glad that it didn't happen to us, but continue to do the research and to continue to do the work and have those conversations with neighboring communities about, what didn't work for you and what are some of the things that maybe we can already have in place. Again, because one of the things, because everything, considering what could have happened, it didn't happen to that degree in Monrovia. I think it's easy to return and continue business as usual, but I think we should continue to do the work to make sure that we're shored up on every front, and thinking about, such as the gentleman that spoke about that one way in and one way out, and just kind of paying attention to some of those things that we might not have been thinking about prior to. That's that. And I didn't see this in your report. Have we considered how Monrovia might be? I know we've not had much time to really think too much because it just happened, but have we considered how Monrovia might be impacted by so many people that are without homes, or or how many people that are in Monrovia now? I know you don't have the answers for that because this is all new and happening fast. But those are things that maybe we can also be thinking about, having a resource page with all the resources on one, and together in one spot. Just kind of paying attention to how we could be impacted by so many people that are without homes right now, and we're such a close neighboring city.
Well, and it's not just homes, people have lost jobs. Businesses have been destroyed. Right, so many structures and livelihoods have been lost. And so people that might live in Monrovia, they no longer have a job. So there's a lot of that as well. I guess we could.
Yeah.
I think we probably.
It's going to be a long haul. I think that's the point.
Yes,
That's being made here, is that this is not something that's going to be, this is going to change us. And I think just kind of thinking through and having those conversations.
The key is what Dylan talked about earlier, is where the directors get together and go through their after action. That's where they're going to be able to pick up on a lot of things, whether we can do better or the different strategies that we need to use in order to have things in place, along with what the council is going to do on the 27th. Okay?
And
That's
that'll be,
just my
for anyone listening, that's our retreat day.
Right.
I appreciate the feedback here tonight. And I would just go back to my first slide I shared where, one of the things that I've always appreciated about working with the city council, working with the department directors, working with the organization is, feedback is good. We should embrace this feedback. How can we get better? How can we do better? How can we be more ready? It's not about pointing fingers. It's not about creating distractions. It's, the term I've been using lately is we're through another one by the skin of our teeth. And how can we take this and how can it help us as we move into the future? So I appreciate the feedback. We'll make sure that when we do our after action, I'm going to put together kind of a concise summary that I want to be able to share with the city council, which will certainly be part of future discussions. And I might also add that we have wonderful opportunities with things like the MAP Neighborhood Conference coming up to do some special sessions and talk about emergency preparedness. and additional community education and outreach. So we're going to, Sherry and I were talking the other day about MAP. How can we really take this last couple weeks and really build it into our future planning and programming for MAP? And what that does for 500 plus community leaders who are also MAP leaders. So we appreciate your support, and we'll look forward to further discussions.
Roger that.
Great, thank you very much. And so then we're moving on then to our reports of city council members. And I'll start off with Mr. Belden.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Well, I would pick up where I just left off, but thank you so much to the tremendous staff in Monrovia. I wanted to thank our fantastic fire department. We've already recognized you, but I would like to recognize you again, of course, for making sure that we stopped that fire really high in Monrovia, just that one house. It's unfortunate for that family, of course, but I'm so thankful that your team was able to get that taken care of, the other fires. And then well, we saw the sheer number of responses you had that day, and I remember looking at Pulse Point and just was amazed that we had that many staff out there handling the situation, and very proud. And thank you so much for the work you did out there. And our police department is just up there as well, just making sure that they're getting out to all the emergencies that were needed to be responded to. I think it was just an evening where we all heard sirens all the time because everyone was taking care of our community. So thank you so much. Our Public Works Department that seems to have been going 24/7, picking up anything and everything in a good way. But thank you for making sure that we had water the whole time. I mean, critical if we'd ever needed it in an emergency, it was there. I was really impressed with all the work that you did. Thank you, Alex, and your team. And of course, our Community Service Department, thank you, Tina, Rebecca, I see you there. But Dylan, I know you already mentioned, but yeah, the importance of having that center for people to come to not only charge a phone, but just to see somebody and hear from them. And our phone, many of us know the phones were not working really well at all. Like you'd get mixed messages, you wouldn't get it. So just having that one location where everyone could come get that information was really critical and helpful. Thank you. Our planning department, thank you as well for making sure that folks just when repairs were needed, you had the inspector there. Thank you so much for that. Our administrative department as well for making sure that we could pay our bills and we could recover those costs. And of course, our city manager and your team. So thank you so much for everything you guys did. It's amazing to live in a community that is so responsive and ready to go. But yes, we can learn more. And thank you to CERT and to our MAP leaders and just all the Monrovians that continue to show such goodwill towards our neighbors, give back, all the donation drives, and just all the folks that were also talking to the neighbors during those times, helping the neighbors clean up. That's the type of community, and I'm looking forward to how we can, as a community, also help our neighboring communities that are really struggling right now and helping. And I'm sure we'll have many ideas and ways, as you all said. It's a long road, and we're going to have to help them, and we're going to hopefully give back as we continue to do. So thank you so much for that. I talked about the resiliency as well already, so I will not go on in any more detail there. Do I need to say anything about the Cal Cities, or just?
Well, I'll say congratulations to Edward for his it's a presidential appointment through Cal Cities, appointment to the League of California Cities Environmental Quality Policy Committee for 1 year. So congratulations on that.
And I'll get back to everyone the meetings are coming up this week, so I'll have a little bit more of a follow-up at the next meeting on what we discussed. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Spicer.
Okay. I'll start off with, I had the privilege of serving with the community emergency response team during this whole ordeal. It was a rewarding experience to be there to help the community in time of need, especially reaching out to our seniors to ensure that they had an evacuation plan. Working with Susan, Miss Dobson, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, working with her was excellent. Also, I want to, just to cover everyone, I'll say the Team Monrovia. You know, you guys did an excellent job. I thought it was very smart with the operations center being open and the people being directed over to the community center. That way, the operations center was able to operate without any trouble, interruptions, things like that, right? Also, I serve as the council liaison to the Community Services Department. So I'm excited to share some fantastic upcoming events and opportunities for the community. So first of all, regarding the garden, the Monrovia Community Garden News, they have a fruit pruning workshop that is coming up. They have a new date that is because of the recent fires. The fruit pruning workshop has been rescheduled. Join them on Saturday, February the 1st at 9:30 at the Monrovia Community Center. And at the Monrovia Community Garden, which is 303 South Colorado Boulevard, for a hands-on experience in pruning your fruit trees to encourage healthy growth. Don't miss out on this educational opportunity. And also, there's going to be a pollinator garden workshop where you can learn how to create beautiful, friendly pollinator gardens. So you can join them also on February the 13th at 7 p.m. at the Community Garden, which is at 303 South Colorado Boulevard. And then you'll be able to discover the importance of pollinators and how you can help protect them. Then you have the Spring Veggie Garden Workshop. So in order to get a jump on your spring gardening, attend our Spring Veggie Garden Workshop on Saturday, March the 8th at 9 a.m. at the Community Garden South, 1650 South Magnolia Avenue. We'll provide tips and tricks, that's some tricks now, for growing a beautiful garden that will thrive all season long. Now, the Monrovia Community Center senior programs. Seniors 50 plus are invited to connect, learn, and have fun in the Monrovia Community Center, where they offer a variety of engaging activities designed to bring companionship and support to our senior community. Some of the highlights include a delicious lunch program with friendly bingo, fun fitness classes to stay active and healthy, educational workshops to expand your knowledge, and they also have some local day trips to explore the area and enjoy new experiences. Now, there's something for everyone at the Monrovia Community Center. Stop by and discover all the exciting programs we have to offer. We can't wait to see you at these wonderful events. Together, we are growing stronger and more connected in Monrovia. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Sergio?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tragedy knows no boundaries, and tragedy can bring about the best in people, the worst in people. But with Monrovians, it really brought out the best in people, and we saw it through the efforts of volunteerism right here in Monrovia. The Doubletree Hotel here, they provided housing. They're accepting donations, non-monetary donations. We saw it this last weekend when the Look Theaters also were collecting donations, non-monetary. The Sierra Subaru here in Monrovia even had a bake sale to help the victims of the Eaton Canyon fire. And I was privileged to also work with the Regional Rotary, which accepted donations. It was huge truckloads of donations that were coming from as far away as San Diego, non-monetary donations, and they met at the Boys and Girls Club in Monterey Park. I know I think for almost everybody that's listening today to City Council knows somebody that's a family member or a close friend that suffered through this tragedy. So even though we say it's in another community, it's really personal to Monrovians. It really hits home. I know that the friends that I have that lost their homes, they were more family than they were simply friends. I think to show that empathy, charity, solidarity is something that Monrovians know how to do very well. And I applaud all these continued volunteer efforts. I also want to share a story that happened to me on New Year's Eve. We're all familiar with the Pathway Homes project, the partnership that the City of Monrovia, LA County, and Pathway Homes had. On New Year's Eve, I went to go get some ingredients so we can prepare Christmas Eve dinner. And one of the people that went through the program, my former homeless person of Monrovia, he was there. He was dressed up. And I said hello to him. We talked in front of Vaughn's here in Monrovia. And he said that he wanted to thank the City of Monrovia, the City Council, and the Mayor. I won't say his name because I don't have permission to say his name. He was waiting for his daughter to take him out to dinner on New Year's Eve here in Monrovia. He finished the program. He is housed. He has his own apartment now. He has a constant cash flow, but it's a success story. It's a Monrovia success story of our efforts to helping the unhoused find housing. So I wanted to share that. And amidst of all these stories, some of them tragic, on Martin Luther King Day, a day of service, I have this quote about really who Martin Luther King really was, because he was about service. Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. And that's something that we need to take into account in these days when people need our service. It doesn't have to be money. Sometimes it's just a word of encouragement that people want to hear, they need to hear nowadays, whether it's helping them find housing for those that lost their homes or relocate a business, or even new businesses that are just starting up in Monrovia right now. Like, for example, we have the Hideout at 108 West Lime. It's a new coffee house that just opened up. I had a blueberry latte there the other day. It was great. It's right across from Library Park. You might miss it because it's literally it's a hole in the wall. This is a hole in the wall. They're open from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. 7 days a week, and almost every time I go by it, there's a line. So I want to encourage people to check out that new business in Monrovia. Again, I applaud those volunteer efforts in Monrovia, and I want to thank the City of Monrovia for what they did. This tragedy brought out the best. I had the privilege of checking in on the EOC. It was encouraging to see our city manager, assistant city manager, our department heads that were working there. The government was functioning, even though we didn't have power. They had power there at the police station, and our government was there when the people needed it. I want to say thank you to all the staff that were there, the fire department, the police department, for being there for Monrovians. And I wanted to compliment community services on the New Year's Eve celebration on Myrtle. I've gotten a lot of feedback. It was a special, iconic Monrovia event that was really family-oriented. I don't know about any other city that does that, a special event at noon as opposed to midnight. Not to say that the midnight event here in Monrovia wasn't a success, it was, but this is special. It's unique to Monrovia. The Monrovia Library volunteers, most of us were there. They had a special breakfast this past weekend to honor them. There's so many volunteer opportunities in Monrovia's public library, the literacy tutor program, the Friends of the Library store, the Veterans Resource Center. Almost all the whole council was present. So I just want to say thank you again to all the volunteers, whether you're volunteering in efforts to help the victims of the Eaton Canyon fire or in some other capacity. Thank you for making Monrovia go.
And Dr. Kelly.
Hello, thank you very much. I want to say that Underdog Bookstore also was there's a lot of people in this community that are doing great things in an effort to support those that were affected by this tragedy. And I had the privilege of being able to go to Underdog Bookstore and drop off some goods. And so if you are thinking about donating, make sure that you are donating things that you would still wear and that they're clean clothes in great condition. You don't want to give someone your hand-me-downs. People are going through enough. And so you want to bring your best. I would suggest that. And another thing, I know a lot of people are trying to figure out what it is that they could do. I would hold on, maybe get some gift cards and that type of thing. Somebody knows somebody that's been affected, so you could probably contact someone that you do know. If you don't know anyone, contact someone that you do know within your group. I guarantee you someone knows someone that can get those gift certificates to them, to the persons that are affected. I know a lot of people are looking for housing right now. Vouchers for hotels are helpful. So I know that I get calls people trying to figure out how can we help? What can we do? And so hopefully we'll be able to, as a city, bring all those options and suggestions together in one location, and that you could go to that space and look for ways in which you could possibly be of help. Well, I get the privilege of being, also I was appointed, I always have to announce myself. I didn't get a big announcement.
Well, do you want to give me?
I mean, what's up with that? I mean, bump, bump. Okay. Well, I get the privilege of being reappointed to the Housing and Economic Development. I thought it was a reappointment, but it's not a reappointment because before I was on the Energy Board, but now I'm on the Monrovia. My goodness. I'm on Monrovia Economic, I keep saying Monrovia.
I'll do it. We are very happy that you have
Whatever
been
it's called.
appointed to the League of California Cities Housing and Economic Development Policy
Yes.
Committee.
So I get a chance, thank you, Mayor. I get a chance to be at a policy meeting on Thursday, and I look forward to being able to come back and bring a report because housing is such a big deal right now. So I'm very curious to see what are the policies that are going to benefit not only Californians, but particularly Monrovia. So I look forward to bringing a report back on that. I also get the privilege of serving on the MOTAB board, the Monrovia City Council liaison for the Old Town Monrovia Advisory Board. And a lot of people don't know what MOTAB is, so I want to explain. MOTAB represents the businesses within the Business Improvement District, the BID. All the businesses in the BID pay a fee along with their annual business license that goes into reserve account restricted for the use in the BID. This is very important. Monrovia Old Town Advisory Board Business Improvement District is different from the chamber because there are times that I will get approached to say that does Monrovia care about all businesses? And I want to share that we care about all businesses. The BID particularly gets this particular acknowledgement in times because they do pay an extra fee and they do take care of certain things within Old Town, such as the white tree lights in Old Town. They pay for that. Music in Old Town, they pay for that. Hay rides in Old Town, holiday decorations. So when you go to Old Town and you see all the beautiful holiday decorations, well, the BID, they take care of that, and so and more. But I wanted to bring that to our attention because there was a very successful event that happened recently, and it was happened on January 16th, where it was a MOTAB mixer. 29 businesses were a part of it with 41 attendees, and so that was a really great event. I also wanted to bring attention to the Friends Library Bookstore that's within the library. I was told by, I can't remember her name, a beautiful woman who works in the bookstore. She shared with me that you could get better book deals at that bookstore than you can in any bookstore around. She promised, no, but she did say that they have really good deals on their books. So I want to encourage you to go in there. A lot of people don't know it's there, but I want to encourage you to go through those double doors, make a left turn, and the bookstore is right there. And they have great books and good deals. And the Wine Walk is coming up April the 5th, so make sure that you get your tickets. It is a big ticketed event and a hot item, so make sure that you make note of that event, April the 5th. That's it.
All right, great. And I join my colleagues and everyone in thanking all of our staff, whether you be police and fire, community services, community development, everyone in everything they did throughout this event, which we're not totally out of either. And I think it's going to, the repercussions will last for years and years, actually. In terms of resources and donations and things like that, not to diminish the need for the fire victims, but we also need to know that there's ongoing need all the time. And Foothill Unity Center, our very own Foothill Unity Center, they're there 7 days a week to take donations and to help people in need, fire victims or not, in most of our churches. And the Humane Society, we talked about them today, as well for our four-legged friends, the Red Cross, YMCA. And I did want to mention a little story. Everybody's got a story. My daughter was, I think that was on Friday night. I'm pretty sure it was Friday night. At any rate, the So Boutique there on Myrtle, and she was telling the owner about a friend of hers who has a 13-year-old daughter, and they'd lost everything in the fire. And the owner said, "Oh, what size is she?" and donated a pair of jeans for her on the spot. And Sarah was so impressed, and that's very nice. And just little things. Sarah even went, not that I wear a lot of makeup, but she went through all my makeup, and I get a lot of automatic deliveries, and there I had excess of things that you can give away. There's all sorts of ways you can give. So at any rate, again, thank you. And you just never know what someone else is going through. You just don't know. And we should always be kind, but I think right now we should even work even harder to understand that others are really suffering. And so I'll leave it at that. What did want to say for the Council of Governments, we had an election this last Thursday, and the third VP was elected. April Verlato, there was a chain there that since she left, she was second VP, then the third VP moved up, and so we had a vacancy, and that's Michael Alois from the city of Glendora. And then I did want to mention the ECRA, the Executive Committee on Regional Homeless Alignment. We are meeting this Friday, and that committee is being tasked with the oversight for the Measure A sales tax measure. It's going to be very interesting because, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just homes that burn, but businesses. And this is a sales tax generator. And so to the effect, to the degree that that's really going to affect our sales tax revenues, Altadena and Palisades and whatnot, there were a lot of businesses that were burned. And obviously then too, people lost their jobs. So a lot of ripple effect across the county. And so we'll see how that works out. We also now have a timeline that we're working on to comply with a lot of the things under Measure A, and I'll be reporting back on that. Did want to mention that the LAHSA homeless count that was scheduled for next week has been rescheduled, and it's been moved to February 18th through the 20th. That's a Tuesday through Thursday. And Tina, what's our date? Wednesday the 19th will be our date, operating out of the community services. But we'll get more information out on that. Also wanted to mention that obviously with the election back in November, we have several new legislators, and we're trying to work them in. They've got a lot of cities that they have to visit, but that they come here and meet us, introduce them to our constituents, and also have the opportunity to talk to them about our goals, our needs, and things like that. And all of them also reached out during the fire, wanting to know, was there anything that they could do for us? Our U.S. Congressman Gil Cisneros and his staff, State Senator Sasha Perez, State Assembly Member John Harbedian, and then also Congresswoman Chu also called as well. And Assembly Member John Harbedian is holding a mayor's, I don't know, does he have a name for it? A mayor's gathering on the 31st for all the mayors in the area. But since we are hosting it here in our city, our entire council will be attending that on the 31st. It's Friday the 31st, correct?
Yep.
And then I had, and then our, we haven't mentioned it, we will be meeting again before this, but I'll just throw it out there. Our State of the City is going to be Tuesday, February 11th in the evening at the Look Theater, so you'll be hearing more about that. And I think I covered, and Larry, everybody's getting assigned to all sorts of neat stuff, but Mr. Spicer has been appointed to the Governance, Transparency, and Labor Relations Policy Committee of the League of California Cities. So we will be hearing back from him as he attends his committee meetings. And with that, and I want to thank all the volunteers for everything you do. I don't care what you volunteer for. I thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And with that, then we have wrapped up our council reports. And we are moving on then to AR1, purchase and sale agreement with the Terry and, is that Cherie McAuliffe Living Trust for real property located at 222 East Cypress Avenue, so in Monrovia. And so I'm turning that over to Mr. Feek.
Yes, thank you, Becky. I apologize. I'm doing a little bit more speaking and presenting this evening than I normally like to, but I'm actually very excited to bring this item to you. The information that you can see on the screen, it's actually hard to read from this vantage point, and I apologize, but I'll try to elaborate on each one of the items before you tonight. The discussion is regarding the purchase and sale with the Terry and Chari McAuliffe Living Trust for a property located at 222 East Cypress Avenue. This particular agreement would be in the amount of $1,530,000 for the purchase of the building and the land. It would also approve a contingency amount equal to 10% of the purchase price for some additional fees, necessary costs associated with the purchase. And I'll go over explanations why here in the upcoming slides. This property at 222 East Cypress Avenue is a very old historic home in Monrovia. It's a two-story Victorian home originally constructed in 1892. It sits on a very large lot, about 180 feet by 180 feet. It is undeveloped. It has had orchards in the past and local residential planting types over the years. But it's a very old home that has been kind of marked as a potential for landmark designation. Property has not come up for sale in many generations, and the city received word several months ago that the property owner, one of the members of the trust, unfortunately passed away, but that the remaining trustee would like to sell the property and relocate to where she could live closer with her family. And so as we got word of this, we began talking with the property owner about potential acquisition. Additional items that I didn't speak about earlier is that it's a large home. It's 8 bedrooms, but also only 1 bathroom. But it also sits on 180 by 180 property also includes 4 separate parcels that are all contiguous. So this item, why consider purchasing the property? Number one, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the city to acquire the land, but also to preserve the Victorian home. It's not every day that we see original 1892 structures come up for sale, but also that have not been affected or built on or expanded in years past. This home will be a wonderful potential for landmark status in the month and maybe year to come, should the city consider it. And I want to point out just steps that we would follow after tonight. If the city decides to move forward, we'd enter into a purchase and sale agreement. It gives us a 30-day due diligence period. It gives us time to conduct any additional testing or research that we would need to. It also, the agreement would allow us to help clear out the property with the property owner's consent and help. She does not desire to take everything in the home with her. We would want to immediately secure whether it be a broken window, whether it be cracks in the exterior fascia to ensure that there's no additional damage that happens to the property. So we'd want to secure the property. And then we would want to return to city council and have a discussion about what do we do in the future. I want to point out that tonight's discussion is solely around purchasing the property for historic preservation purposes. The only analysis and environmental review we've done is to that extent. And so the reason we're not talking about or even considering at this time any kind of future use is because the city has not done any kind of environmental review, which would be required under CEQA. So I'm going to share some photos of the home, interior, exterior, and talk a little bit about some of the conditional issues. The city did engage with Morrison Property Inspections to do what's called like a pre-purchase inspection. So they flew a drone over the rooftop to inspect the roof. They looked at all the plumbing and utilities. They also went through room by room and inspected the property and provided a 50-plus page document of condition-related items. So this is the property if you were viewing it from Cypress Avenue. They point out in the report several different condition issues. These are all related to the exterior condition. There's existing vegetation that abuts up against the property that's not ideal for home hardening, like fire home hardening, but also just keeping bugs and pests and vegetation off of the exterior. There's signs of paint fading, both on the overhangs, on the exterior facade. There's cracks in some of those exterior boards. The picture in the center, lower picture, actually highlighted there's a small beehive. So we would want to get out there and secure the bees from furthering damage to the property. And then window sills, a typical reason, an important reason for typical aspect of historic landmark status tends to include the windows. So one thing that we'll always look at is condition of the windows and trying to preserve those wood-clad windows. In this case, we've already identified damage to the windows, the sills. We'd want to be sure that we're identifying and preserving those as well. Looking at some of the interior, starting from the upper left corner, this is a picture of the attic. You'll see some of the bracing that may be split or broken. I think that's typical from a home that's over 130 years old. There's kind of an exterior room on the back that's an unfinished, but you can just see what 130 plus year old wood looks like. You can see the crawl space on the upper right portion. We want to make sure and secure that. The city's actually responded to calls for coyotes on this property in the past, so making sure to secure not only underneath the home, but also the property itself. There are some noticeable cracks in the foundation on the lower right. We looked at all the interior photos and, there's some, cleanup and I'm going to call personal belonging removal we'll want to do. Several of the rooms in the center lower photo. And then the photo on the bottom left just shows this kind of a ridge beam that is undersized for the type of construction. It was typical in 1892, but it's not something that we would ever approve today. So those are the types of things in restoring and preserving a home that a craftsman will want to look at and use as kind of a roadmap to help preserve the home. Some additional interior, these are more of the living space areas. You can see that there's sections of the home where the lath and plaster has either been falling apart or the paint has been fading. The picture in the center on the top, you can actually see some of these decorative features around some of the lighting areas, but they've been painted over many times before, and the homeowner, who's an elderly woman, has not been able to continue painting. And certainly the funds to maintain a historic property such as this are significant. Pictures of other living spaces with a lot of just personal belongings that we'll want. She's currently working through, decide what she's going to keep with her and take, but then remaining stuff will either be donated or eventually scrapped and or recycled. Picture on the lower right, that's the single shower, the single bathroom facility, and then lower left is the kitchen area. As I walk through it myself with the inspection team, I just think there's tremendous potential in this home, much like Steve Baker's properties, not too far from where we sit here tonight. But when a homeowner lacks the funding to invest in a sizable property like this, it just becomes a very difficult thing to maintain. There are utility issues, everything from the electric meter will need to be upgraded. Some of the different fittings and conduits, should be, typical construction is they actually extend up above the roof line, but in cases like this, in the center picture on the top, you can see that it ends right at the middle of the second floor. That's not typical. That should be improved. You can see a lot of upper right photo, a lot of rust related to the water and plumbing. Lower right is your sewer underneath the house, which again has you can see a small leak there that will all need to be repaired. And then also a lot of your knob and tubing, is that what they call it? Knob and
Knob and
tubing?
tube.
Still signs of that throughout the basement of the house. So as part of a repair to this house, you will probably be addressing all of those issues at the same time. Terms of the agreement, I'm going to go over these one by one just because it's hard to read, but these are all found in an outline in the staff report. Purchase price would be $1,530,000. This is consistent with the appraisal that the city sought prior to purchase. If the council proceeds tonight, we would issue a deposit equal to 2% of the purchase price. We do that within 2 business days. That'll go into an escrow account that will be held by Lotus Escrow. We used them in the past with the purchase of the 324 South Myrtle building. They were very easy to work with for both the seller as well as us, the buyer. There will be no brokerage and realtor fees as part of this transaction. As I mentioned earlier, the city would have 30 days to perform due diligence, any additional due diligence, including any inspections if we want to develop any quotes or estimates for these repair items. There's even partners that the inspection company works through if we want to get preliminary quotes pretty quickly. If the city decides to do additional environmental reviews, part of the escrow period will be the seller's disclosures. The city attorney's office will assist with review of those. Those will also help us understand should we need to undertake any additional due diligence. Typical buyer and seller costs will be split and handled per usual residential property transaction. Some of those are split 50-50. Some are customarily paid by a buyer or a seller. I want to make it very clear that we're purchasing this property in as-is condition. And also the seller has requested to occupy the home until April 15th. This gives her sufficient time to get all her affairs in order. And I think it's a fairly simple request that I certainly feel comfortable that the city could make. We'll make sure we have proper insurance on the property, but this gives her time to relocate, get her affairs in order, and really try to make what's been her longtime home and the transition of selling that home much easier for her to move forward with. I want to point out one additional step that is a requirement that I didn't include in this presentation is prior to cities purchasing property, the Planning Commission must determine that the purchase of that property is in conformance with its general plan. We had originally scheduled for that to happen about a week and a half ago, and we canceled all of our meetings during the Eaton fire response. So the Planning Commission, is noted in the staff report, will be meeting in the beginning of February to make that determination. Sherry's already been working on the staff report. We aligned our due diligence period with that Planning Commission meeting so that we could accomplish that. They could make their findings, and then we would still have plenty of time to make a decision, all within that due diligence period. So that's the bulk of the presentation tonight. The item before you, if you decide to proceed, the motion would be to move for approval of the purchase and sale agreement with the Terry and Shari McAuliffe Living Trust for real property located at 222 East Cypress Avenue in the amount of $1,530,000. It would also approve a contingency amount not to exceed $153,000 for additional fees and necessary costs associated with the purchase. Could also choose not to proceed with the purchase and sale agreement. You could also provide any necessary direction or feedback to staff at this time, which we could obviously return back. That concludes my report and presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
And I assume that motion would be contingent or subject to the necessary approvals from our Planning Commission.
Correct. I think at this point, we have enough language in the purchase and sale agreement that we are able to exit out of the due diligence period and basically walk away from the deal anytime within that 30-day window. I do believe, though, that the 2% deposit we put down in escrow, if we walk away, the seller would get to keep that deposit.
Okay. Questions of Dylan?
I'm very excited as a former Historical Preservation Commissioner and a member of MOPEG that the city sees preserving Monrovia's historic structures as a priority, as it should. This building was built like 5 or 6 years after our incorporation as a city. So I'm really excited that we're going to be doing this. And it needs to be done.
Well, if we don't have any other comments or questions, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the purchase and sale agreement with the Terry and Shari McAuliffe Trust for the property at 222 East Cypress Avenue in the amount not to exceed $1,513,000 and approve a 10% contingency on that.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we please have a roll call vote?
Council members Belden,
Yes.
Jimenez.
Yes.
Spicer.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Kelly and Mayor Shevlin.
Yes, thank you very much.
I was eating a cake.
And I didn't ask, but we didn't have any public comment on that. Okay, we are moving on then to AR2, which is an amendment to Title 17 zoning code of the Monrovia Municipal Code, amending regulations pertaining to accessory dwelling units, ADU units. And so we have Jennifer Driver, our senior planner, here this evening to present.
Good evening, Mayor Shevlin and members of the City Council. Before you today is the review of a proposed ordinance that updates Monrovia's municipal code and regulations pertaining to ADUs and JADUs in compliance with California state law. The proposed ordinance is in response to a number of state bills that have been adopted, have become effective, beginning as most recently as January 1st of 2025, that have changed the ADU regulations since we have last updated our ADU ordinance in 2020. The overall intent of these bills is to increase ADU development potential on residential lots by further reducing local barriers and streamlining the ministerial review process. The proposed ordinance would bring our ADU and JADU standards to compliance with the new laws by establishing the statewide minimum requirements, while also maintaining certain standards that are Monrovia-centric to the extent feasible. So just to give you a little background on what ADUs are and why they're important to our community, I'll just go over a few things. ADUs are smaller independent residential dwelling units that are located on the same lot as a primary dwelling. That could be a single-family property, a multifamily property, or a mixed-use property with a residential component. ADUs can either come in the form of an attached structure or a detached structure. They can be newly constructed, or they can be created through converting existing space, either within the primary structure or an accessory structure. JADUs, on the other hand, are smaller living units, and they are only permitted on properties developed with the single-family dwelling structure. And the JADU would be contained completely within the existing single-family dwelling structure. So the proposed ordinance aligns Monrovia's regulations with state requirements and establishes both the state minimum standards for ADUs and creates some local restrictions for projects that want to deviate from the state minimum standards. In addition to other requirements and objective design standards that I'll get into in a little bit, the ordinance also incorporates additional height allowances for certain properties. The crux of the ordinance and changes in state law reinforce the idea that all ADUs and JADUs are by right and ministerial and only require approval of a building permit. Through this ordinance, the city has taken the opportunity to rebrand the existing ADU, the existing two-pronged ADU review process, the building permit only process, and the planning division review process, and to create two different sets of standards that ADUs would have to comply with. And these are the streamlined permit standards and the alternative local standards. The streamlined permit standards allow for more but smaller ADUs and meet the state's minimum requirements, whereas the ADUs using the alternative local standards would be fewer in number but larger ADUs and would then be subject to the Monrovia-centric standards. So let's talk about what types of ADUs and JADUs are allowed on properties developed with a single-family dwelling. Currently, when using both of our current processes, the building permit only and planning division review process, properties are only allowed two ADU typologies, one ADU and one JADU. The ADU can be attached, detached, converted, or newly built, but they're only limited to two currently. The proposed new laws change this regulation and increase the number and type available. Through the streamlined permit standards, you're now allowed three different types of ADUs. One ADU created from converting existing space, either as part of the existing primary structure or converting an existing detached structure. And then another ADU that's newly constructed as a detached structure, and then one JADU within the single-family structure. When using the alternative local standards, however, you're limited to two ADU types, just like how ADUs are now constrained. So that single ADU would be either newly constructed, converted, or attached or detached, and then there would also be allowed one JADU. And I just want to reiterate that the streamlined standards, the purpose of that is to increase the number of ADUs allowed to be built. And the purpose of the alternative local standards is to be able to allow for applicants to deviate from these minimum standards and for us to apply some Monrovia-centric design standards.
Excuse me, just so I understand, so what we're talking about for our local standards, we would have the alternative and not have the streamlined options?
So the ordinance establishes both. So applicants have the choice of using the minimum guaranteed standards that they're guaranteed to have a newly constructed ADU that's 800 square feet in size, that meets the minimum setback requirements of such as like 4 feet from a side and rear property line, and would have to be constrained within the allowed height limits. If applicants wanted to go bigger, they could. They could go and use the alternative local standards, and that would allow that. But that would make the property subject to different standards that are Monrovia-centric. And that's what we have some flexibility in establishing our own rules and regulations. But we do have to be within the limits of state law, too.
Okay, I'm going to let you go. I still have a question, so go ahead.
So to get a visual of what's going to be allowed using the state streamlined standards, here are two scenarios that show two ADUs and one JADU with the single-family dwelling. I stated you can either convert a portion of the existing home into an ADU, or you can convert the existing garage into an ADU that's detached from the primary structure. And then you can also construct a newly built ADU that's detached, all in addition to the JADU that's within the existing single-family dwelling. Lots that are using the alternative local standards, the number of ADU types allowed is not changing from what's currently in place under today's municipal code. But what is new is that it's subject to new objective design standards that allow us to maintain that Monrovia character. And again, there's like a variety, there's 4 different types of scenarios that can potentially arise when you're using these local standards, showing the variety of different ways that the ADU can be converted or newly constructed in conjunction with the junior accessory dwelling unit. So now on to lots with multifamily structures. Under current regulations, all properties are permitted up to 2 detached ADUs and a minimum of 1 ADU and up to 25% of the number of existing units within the non-livable space within the building structure. Under the proposed ordinance, it's important to note that ADUs are built only using the state's minimum standards, and there are no local alternative standards in the proposed ordinance for ADUs built in conjunction with a multifamily dwelling structure. In line with state law, the number of ADUs depends on whether the property is already developed with a multifamily structure or is vacant and is proposed to be developed with a multifamily structure. So for properties that currently are developed with a multifamily structure, they would be allowed up to 8 detached ADUs, but keep in mind that the number of ADUs that would be allowed can't exceed the number of existing units on that property. These multifamily properties would also be allowed the standard or the current rate of conversion for ADUs within the building itself. Now, for vacant properties that have a multifamily structure proposed, they would be subject to the current standards that we have in place, meaning they're only allowed up to 2 detached ADUs and then up to the 25% conversion rate within the structure itself. Keep in mind, though, for the first option, the number of properties that potentially could have 8 ADUs is going to be limited, typically to properties that are zoned RH, and you may see this around the metro station or along Doherty Road. So to visualize what this could look like, here are 2 diagrams that are not to scale, keep that in mind, but just to show how this could play out. You can see that both of these scenarios have a large open area that's undeveloped, meaning that the properties that want to have these detached ADUs would have to have open space. So those properties are also few and far between within the city of Monrovia. So the potential to see these 8 dwelling units is not going to be high. But you can see with a scenario of an existing 16-unit development, they could have up to 12 ADUs, 8 being detached and 4, which is 25% of the 16, being converted within the structure. If it's a vacant property with a proposed 16-unit multifamily structure, they're only allowed 2 detached ADUs and then the same 4 units within the structure.
I don't mean to keep on interrupting you, but on that, so if you have the 16 existing units and you say you can only have 8 detached ADUs, okay, you've got 16 owners and 16 units. Who gets to build the ADUs and who doesn't? If you can only build 8 and you've got 16 units.
So it's per property. It's for the lot itself. It's not for the number of individual units.
Say you've got an existing project and you've got 16 owners that own 16 condo units, and you're only allowed to build 8 ADUs. How do you've got 16 owners, but you can only build 8 ADUs?
If I may jump in, Mayor Shevlin, I think for the majority of these types of properties, they're going to be rental properties where you're going to have a multifamily unit that has attached units, and they'll come in.
That still would be I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Someone would own the whole thing.
Correct.
But if it was, okay, so when you say multifamily, you're talking about apartments and not condos or a PUD or something like that.
The only way a condo project really realistically could do it would be by creating some entity to own the common property, right?
Right.
There's no other way to do it on a condo. This is really contemplating being on a rental property situation.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, that gets really into the weeds on that, and also you could complicate it as well because ADUs can be technically owned separately. So, but we won't get into that.
Okay. So the next important change with these new state laws is related to height allowances. There are now 3 different opportunities for ADUs to gain additional height above the base minimum or maximum of 16 feet. The first instance is when the property that's either a single-family developed property or a multifamily developed property is within a half-mile distance of a qualified transit stop or corridor. The city does not currently have a qualified transit corridor, but it does have a qualified transit stop, and that's the metro station. So the height increase would apply to that radius as shown in the diagram here. In addition, the second opportunity for additional height is when the ADU is attached to a single-family dwelling structure. And then the last opportunity is when the ADU is developed in conjunction with a multi-story, multi-family dwelling structure. Now we're going to talk about regulations and requirements that apply to all types of ADUs, regardless of what standards are being utilized. First, the city can no longer require a covenant in conjunction with an ADU that restricts the sale of an ADU or restricts the terms of rent. JADUs, though, are still subject to the owner occupancy requirements through the covenant. This is because state law now permits the sale of an ADU from the primary dwelling, but keep in mind this is only in certain, certain strict circumstances that are hard to meet. And then lastly, the new state laws make it clear that ADUs cannot be used as short-term rentals, meaning less than 30 days, but JADUs are not subject to the same restriction. Additionally, the state does allow cities to develop objective standards. Let me backtrack. While the state has applied many universal standards, it is important to stress that the city is still able to consider neighbor compatibility and the city's desire to preserve historic resources. So to that end, ADUs developed using the local alternative standards would still be subject to the existing historic resource provisions in the current code. The proposed ordinance just makes especially clear what is required and what features can be considered in that review. Additionally, the state does allow cities to develop objective design standards for projects that deviate from the state's minimum standards, so long as they don't apply to ADUs using the state's minimum standards and they cannot be open to interpretation. This ordinance establishes objective standards to maintain Monrovia's character, but within the limitations of state law. The ordinance clarifies that current design standards specify exactly what architectural features shall be matching with the primary dwelling, and the ordinance also includes standards to strengthen neighbor compatibility and reduce privacy impacts. In addition to establishing all of these new standards for ADU development, the state has passed Assembly Bill 1332 that requires local agencies to create programs that offer pre-approved ADUs to the public. The offering of these plans will simplify the review process and lower the cost of constructing new ADU structures. It's important to note that the presentation of this program tonight is to provide information and to solicit interest in the program, and is not part of the proposed ordinance. So to assist the city in developing this program, the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments initiated an ADU prototype project to amass ADU plans for use by member cities. Monrovia selected 5 of these plans out of the grouping for its pilot program. Monrovia chose these plans mainly based on the fact that they comply fully with the state's streamlined permit standards, meaning that they would not require that additional layer of review through the Monrovia-centric plans. The city will continue to accept additional ADU plan submissions for pre-approval from any firm. And these plans may deviate from the minimum standards and be subject to the local objective standards and can then require matching architectural style with the primary dwelling. So again, this is a pilot program. We're just starting with plans that are simple, that meet the state's streamlined standards, and we are open to expand it in the future. So, in summary, the ordinance was presented to the Planning Commission on December 11th, where they adopted Resolution Number 2024-0008, recommending approval of Ordinance Number 2025-01, and staff recommends to the City Council that they introduce, read by title only, and waive further reading of Ordinance Number 2025-01, and set for public hearing on February 4th, 2025. That concludes my presentation, and I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Questions? Well, I have a question. I've had a lot of questions. So the state it doesn't require any additional parking under any of these situations. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. Under most situations, parking is not required. Mainly using the state streamlined standards, parking cannot be required. Parking can be required for properties using the alternative local standards when they're not within a half-mile radius of a public bus stop, which is different than the major transit stop that I mentioned earlier. So it's any bus station. So if a property is not located within a half-mile of that, then they are required to have parking, but there's other conditions that they have to meet as well. Like it's not a historic resource, that's not being converted from an existing space. There's just a lot of exceptions. So very few properties would be required to have parking on site.
And that's my point. Very, very few. And our neighborhoods are already so beyond impacted by parking. So if you took one of those properties and you plopped 8 ADUs on them, all of which would have cars, they've tied our hands. I'm essentially saying or asking, and I'm assuming I already know the answer to this. This update to our ordinances, we have no power to deny it.
That is correct. If the city doesn't adopt an ordinance, we still are required to default to the state standards. I think the one thing, though, that Monrovia did try to do is separate out standards that we have to comply with per state law and adapt standards that we still have to comply with state law, but weave in some Monrovia-centric protections for historic, or, protect our historic resources, and of course, neighborhood compatibility. But every time the state, implements these new laws, there is this narrower window of limitations on what the city can do. I can assure you, though, that over the last year, almost last year, we've had a team of planners working alongside the San Gabriel Valley COG, as well as with our city attorney's office, to really whittle out or to put in any provision for protections that we could. There are very few.
Yeah, and unfortunately, parking isn't one of them. I guess is all we can hope is SB 9, we're really frightened that SB 9 was going to change things drastically. How many applications have we had for SB 9?
A handful. I think we have one project that's maybe under construction, and the others have gotten near approval, but never really fully implemented their plans.
And just for conversation here, I'm just curious, have we done any analysis as to how many units this could possibly add?
The new ADU provisions, we haven't done any analysis based on these new provisions, but I can report that the city, over the course of this housing element cycle, we are 4 years into our 8-year cycle, and we've already issued, approvals on 227 ADUs. Our goal for development was 232 in an 8-year period, so we're averaging a little over 50 every calendar year. It'll be interesting to see if this takes off, and
Well, and also,
We'll be
I might ask
tracking it.
Craig, I haven't seen anybody do it yet where you actually take ownership of an ADU. I know technically the state allows it, but it's, oh, my goodness, yes. But it does the parking restrictions or the lack of parking restrictions is very, very worrisome. But like you said, this is what we've been handed.
I do want to add, Mayor, just to Sherry's answer to one of your questions about just saying no. I mean, I think that it's possible, as Sherry said, and then you default to the state standards.
Right.
But just keep in mind that the purpose of the state standards, the new ones, are to encourage more ADUs.
Yes.
And as you saw in the chart, there's more ADUs allowed on a lot under the state
Right.
than under the local standards. So not adopting and creating an option for
Right.
these local standards has the effect of increasing
minimizing.
potentially the number of ADUs that are possible in the
And
city.
I'm a big fan of ADUs. We built an ADU on our property, and it's been very great to have our daughter live there, and it's very nice, but we can park all 3 cars if we have to on our lot. So that's not always the case. So, at any rate. Okay, any other questions or comments?
I have a few.
Okay.
Madam Mayor. Just the couple questions on the size limit. So for the Monrovia standard, do we have a maximum size?
Yes, the maximum allowed would be 1,000 square feet, but the maximum permitted for the property is based off of the amount of square footage that's allowed for the property. So, yeah, it's between 800 and 1,000, subject to different standards too.
Thank you. And is it still the case that going back to your parking question, that you're supposed to be able to provide the parking on in a driveway or some type of facility on your property still, right?
So you want me to take it? The parking requirement is, if you're developing an ADU under the state standards, the streamlined standards, there's no parking requirement. The parking requirements kick in when you're developing under the Monrovia-centric or alternative standards, and you fall without any of those exemptions. So you're not within a half a mile of transit.
Okay. And multifamily still has no parking requirements if
Correct.
they use the state process as
That
well?
is correct.
Do you want to add that the parking that we're mentioning that is required, when it is required, can be uncovered or covered? I think that was kind of where you were leaning towards.
Right, uncovered and just in
Yeah.
terms of, okay, but now in the state law, no obligation to fill it at all or provide it.
There are no, the majority of all the parking requirements are status quo in previous provisions. We never were able to require parking for multifamily development. And the exemptions were still the same for not having to park.
And are we getting rid of the covenant that says you have to keep it to, or excluding short-term rentals?
So yes, and that's because the state doesn't allow us to deed restrict ADUs. The prohibition on using an ADU for a short-term rental is still in place.
Because that's the covenant that we had to sign and record, that we could not use it as a
Short-term rental.
short-term rental.
I think we should look back on that, because when I looked over the law, it didn't seem to exclude us having that covenant. It did say you couldn't have covenants that, restricted uses and everything, but it clearly, I thought in the same paragraph, said, of course, you could still do it to remind people that they can't do short-term rentals of, less than 30 days. I thought we could still do it. So if you don't mind, we don't have to
can
amend this one, but if it's there, I'd love to see it come back. could just
Okay, we can
put
confirm that.
back in.
And Sherry, I'm sorry to be so dense on this. So you've got these two, the streamlined and the local. I come to you, I say I want to build an ADU. Do I choose which one I'm going
No.
to go?
So the planner, we understand there's a lot of information to unpack in every ADU
Right.
bill that comes
Right.
forward. And we live and breathe ADUs in the planning division. I mean, this is what we do for a living. We process ADUs for the most part. we first asked, what is it that you're trying to build? Let's take a look at your property. And our planners are there really to gauge, making sure that we tell you the options, that you're in a user-friendly manner, that you're going to be able to decide, oh, maybe I'll keep my ADU at 800 square feet. It's smaller. I'll have more restrictions on size, or maybe I want to do a little bit bigger because I need a bigger ADU, but understanding that if I go bigger, it will have to, match my home. We are constantly trying to work
But
with
it's
on a
still,
personal level.
it's up to the person, it's the developer that gets to make that decision.
Generally,
whether-
they're homeowners who have a need for another unit on their property. They usually are partnering with an architect who's done this. We encourage them to use folks who've done work in Monrovia, who are used to working with our staff. We have a lot of resources that we're going to be putting on our city's website. Our team does different types of workshops. We've done workshops for MOHPG, different map events. And so there's still a lot of education that we plan to roll out this year to help making this easy to understand for the community.
Well, I can say my process went very smoothly, and you guys were great. And it was just, it added to a detached garage. But at any rate, okay.
Just one little quick, I wanted to say thank you so much for the presentation. Also, the inclusion of the new kind of essentially pre-approved plans almost. I think it's a great option, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of the designs. But I hope we could also include a potential price range for the plan so people have an idea of how much they should. I mean, if we as a city are highlighting someone, we should know what a rough range of that cost is for them, and that way, we're kind of helping to select people ahead of time. We're giving that person an opportunity to really get a leg up on who might be looking for a plan set, but we should understand what they're going to charge for that plan set. Thank you.
I've offered up my plans many times.
Well, I might take you up on them.
And it's on the smaller side, so at any rate. Okay. Thank you very much. I understand, it is beyond a complicated and layered topic. And like I said, we won't even talk about the ability to own it outright. That's a whole nother can of worms. So do we have, without any further questions, we didn't have any requests for public comment on that one? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to introduce, waive further reading, and read by title only ordinance number 2025-01 and set for public hearing on February 4th, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmembers Belden?
Yes.
Jimenez?
Yes.
Spicer?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Kelly?
Yes.
And Mayor Shevlin?
Yes. Well, thank you very much. Excellent report. I understand it's really, really, really complicated.
We just need to read that title, Mayor. It's ordinance number 2025-01, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Monrovia, California, amending section 17.44.005 of the Monrovia Municipal Code pertaining to accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units to comply with recent changes to state law, finding the ordinance to be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act.
Thank you very much. Then we do not have any further public input. We don't have any items that were pulled from consent to be heard. Our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, February 4th, 7:30 p.m. in these council chambers. And this evening, we adjourn at 10:17 in the memory of Jose Cruz Sandoval, father-in-law of Recreation Manager Rebecca Sandoval, Christopher Paul Atherall, father-in-law of Lieutenant Kevin Oberon, and Jim Spring, longtime resident and literacy/youth advocate. Jim was married to our beloved Joanne Spring. And again, just we just don't know all the things that people are going through with everything that's going on. So keep families and business owners, keep them in our hearts and prayers. And just let's all be nice. Extra special kind. Okay, and we are adjourned. Thank you.